Hello. Today we're going to go over something a little bit different than usual. I've been getting lots of questions about this with my vlogs and with my videos, the way that I color grade. So I'm going to be going over how to make your S-Log or log footage in general go from this to this. All using Final Cut Pro 10. And yeah, let's get right into it. This should work for any log footage, like it should. I'm going to try to just teach you the tools to understand what I'm doing so that you can apply it to what you're doing. And then I'm also going to show you my orange and teal kind of effect that I like to put on pretty much everything. It's completely manual, it's completely free, it's no LUT download, it's nothing like that. I don't even use the orange and teal effect within Final Cut. So it's going to, hopefully you're just going to understand why it does what it does so that you can apply it. That's my goal. So I'm just going to show you just using one clip. Okay, so first thing you're going to do is you're going to open your Final Cut Pro. You're going to import your media and do everything normally, start your project. So I'm just going to use this clip because this was from a failed attempt at a vlog in Chinatown. The reason I say it was failed is because I kept getting asked to put my cameras away and not able to shoot. I was trying to do another film simulation there, but it didn't really work out that great, so I'm gonna have to do it somewhere else. So I'm gonna show you just how I would grade something like this. So this is using S-Log on the Sony. It has a pretty good dynamic range, so that it already seems okay. Like, I know that some people like that kind of unfinished filtered look, which is fine. Like, I'm okay with like that desaturated kind of washed out flat look too in certain scenarios, but I think this will really help you get that contrast and that cinematic look that you're trying to apply to your videos. What we're going to start by doing in Final Cut is we're going to make a different workspace here. This is what I call my media workspace. So I have my media, my window, and my inspector, and then project down here. So if you go into window and in workspaces, these are what I've made and saved, but then these are what you'll see, the default, the organize, and color and effects. So I'm going to show you how I made my grading workspace here. So if you just go into the color and effects, it's going to change a little bit here. And you're going to see on the left-hand side these 4 windows of just information. I only use 3. So if you go into the view, it shows you the layout choice that you have here and how you want things selected. I personally use the bigger window on top and the 2 smaller on the bottom. And then what I will do on the top is I'll keep my Luma here, because I think that the waveform of a Luma, it just says a lot about the footage, and it's really easy to understand even if you are a beginner. So I would keep that there, and I'd keep that pretty prominent on the top in the big window. And then down here, so I would change it to RGB overlay waveform, so that you can kind of see each color kind of separately, which I'll explain what they do when you're grading. And then I keep the vector scope here, which helps you understand the colors that you like. This is more of like a color wheel, and the orange and teal, the reason that it's so popular is because they are such complementary colors to each other, because they are opposite of the color wheel, so they contrast each other very well. So that's basically what this is if you look here, there's orange, there's teal directly across from each other. I just leave that there just as a nice little guide. And then what I do is when you select the footage, you go into the colors here, so the little triangle logo, and under no corrections, I would start at the color wheels. So what these are is the right side of each thing, shadows, highlights, midtones, and master, are going to adjust the exposure of them. And then the left side is the saturation. And then the middle is the color. So they look pretty daunting, but they're really self-explanatory. So this is where you're going to start using your windows that you've just created in your workspace here. When you create the workspace, I forgot to say, you can save workspace as, and which I've done to grading. So I'm just going to switch to that, where it makes a little bit more focused on these so that I can see everything. So you can change the window sizes and stuff and save it that way. So what we're going to do is the Luma is explaining here, here's the 0 value, which means anything below 0 is black. Shadow detail will be lost below that. Anything above 100 is also highlight detail that will be too blown out that it's just white. So you want to be within those parameters unless you're really looking for a certain look. But this is just a rule of thumb that you're going to try to balance this Luma out using these color wheels at the start. This is my workflow. This is the order I do it in. Feel free to learn these tools and then rearrange or do whatever you want. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pull the shadows down till they're just about 0. And you can see the Luma sliding and adding a little bit of contrast to the video. And then what I want to do is the majority of the Luma here is around here. I wouldn't really say that this line needs to hit 100 and then you can't go any further. You could probably chop some of that, up to you, but this is again just kind of a basic guide. So if we take the highlights bar and we start bringing it up, you'll see the video brightening up. And if you want to lose a little bit to a blowout, then that's fine because that's also kind of a look. So I'll go a tiny bit above where this peaks. That's fine if that goes over 100 because that's obviously a rarity in this clip, and that's clearly the whites down in here. So that's what the Luma will tell you, and that's where you get that nice contrast where you're not losing too many shadows, you're not blowing out too many highlights. This is a really good starting point. This is why I do this step first. And then midtones, I kind of look where it's most weighted, which is kind of around this point. And then you want to be around that 50 mark as a rule of thumb. So you can even bring that up just a little bit and then watch the footage if you don't really like the look. So what I might do here is I'll pull the shadows back down after because that pulled them up a little bit. I'm not a huge fan of crazy dark contrast, so that's why I would personally I would go a little bit more mid-tone and then pull the shadows back down so that you see a little bit more of everything. So that's where we've started. This is basically now the color sorted out, the balance of the contrast, and then you can choose the saturation in a minute, but I want to explain this RGB overlay. So this is the white balance and the temperature basically. So let's say you're shooting on auto white balance, which most people do, which is fine. This will help you kind of dial it in as a rule of thumb, or understand that you don't really have to follow this if you like a warmer look or a cooler look. It doesn't really matter. But I'll show you what changes here. So if you take your temperature slider under the color wheels, watch what happens to this RGB overlay. So if I pull it cold, the blues go up. If I pull it warm, they drop, and the reds and the greens and stuff all kind of come towards the middle. So this was a very blue day, very cold colored, and I didn't choose the white balance to be any more warm toned. So this is probably where I'm going to just max it out to warm. What you would ideally want is when you see the blue, the green, and the red in separate waves, you want to try to line them up. That's where you're going to get like a really natural look. But again, if you're filming in California and you want that really warm look like I really like, then I would just keep going and I'd have the blues drop down a little bit, which is, again, it's fine. It's personal preference on this kind of color, but that's what that RGB overlay will show you, is that the blue is on top, so the footage is a lot cooler based. It just looks more blue. So I'm going to pull that all the way up to 10,000, and then I usually don't play with the tint, the green and pink basically, but if you watch, if I slide it left, the red on the RGB will drop. If I go right, it'll start meeting up to make that pinky tone. So again, it's not really my kind of, I don't really use it too much unless I want that green. Like, I really like certain things that are very moody and green. If it's very cinematic, then I'll do that. All right, computer froze for some reason when I hit that tint, so we had to jump back into it. Yeah, so tint, green or pink, again, you choose. But this is what I wanted to explain, was just kind of the basics. So once you land, now I gotta go back into here. So once you find, you know, your contrast is good, you're close to 0, you're close to 100, you're around 50 for like the body of the footage. Your overlay is close to how you like it. What you want to do next is the saturation of each thing. So that's also a personal preference. You could just pull the master up, which, you know, will just bring the whole thing up, and you can maybe kind of hover that around here. But if you like pulling the highlights through or something like that, then you can do that. But now we're going to get into the orange and teal effect that everybody loves. So let me just let this buffer. Okay, so this is what you're going to do. The idea behind teal and orange is, like I said, they contrast well to each other, they complement each other. So the basic theory of it is that you want to push the blues and teals into the shadows, and you want to pull the orange and the yellows into the highlights. So this is where you can do, or this is what you can do with the color wheels too, is this is a pretty good example just because there is blue, but I do have skin tone, I have some orange in the buildings, and then like later in the clip, it does get to more of a warmer tone. So what we're gonna do is these little dots in the center of each wheel here is explaining on the color wheel around the edges where you're pulling the shadow. So because we said we want to push the shadow, or the blues and the teals into the shadows, when you look in the bottom right corner here, you see teal to blue. So what you want to do is you literally just pull this, and the saturation bar on the left will change to the color that you're choosing so that you know, and you just want to look for a nice teal. So around there, you don't want to go too blue, you kind of want to go for that nice teal. The further you pull it, the more it's gonna affect it. So let's go there with the shadows. And then the highlights, you're gonna do the opposite. You're gonna go the other way towards the reds and the orange. But if you choose the orange, look at how much better the picture looks already. It just has that really nice contrast to it. I usually go like pretty light orange, like closer to the yellow, not closer to the reds, just because I like that kind of sunsetty look. So we're gonna go like that. And then the midtones, I'll go a little slightly teal on it. Actually, let's go like, well, yeah. So if you're in a cool environment, maybe midtones to the orange side is nice. Let's go slightly orange on the midtones as well. We'll let that render up. Okay, so that looks pretty good. You can go a little bit further, and I will in a further video where I talk about like color curves and stuff like that. But this will just give you a nice general orange and teal graded look from log footage. I see a lot of people using log, but they're not color correcting it. They're not grading it. They're just keeping it flat. And again, it has its time and place where I don't mind it, but this is hopefully so that you understand like what each thing is doing and what log really helps you accomplish. So the other thing I will say is when you run through the clip, it should be pretty consistent. It should look pretty good even when the scenes change. Like the red looks great on that pole. Then when I turn into the sun here, oh yeah. Then I have to clear my throat. So then it stays pretty consistent throughout. So you could even make that general edit, copy and paste that to all your clips, and it should be okay. So yeah, short and sweet. So I will show you the before and after here on this, because when you get to the end of this, because you've watched such a slow progression, it doesn't look like a lot. If we go back to the video inspector here, turn off the effect for a second, and look at that. So at the beginning, it didn't look that bad. And then when you finish, it doesn't look like a huge difference. But when you toggle them, like that's pretty significant. And that, you know, this now looks unfinished. On its own, it would have passed as okay. And you do see a lot of companies doing that kind of stuff, that very washed out, flat look. But then you flick that on, and it's like, oh man, like that's what you're here to learn. That's what you wanted to see. So this has been my quick, easy, basic tutorial using Final Cut Pro 10, not X, 10, to get the orange and teal look, completely free. And hopefully you've learned a little something. I'm going to be doing a video on masking next, hiding text behind moving objects in videos, another popular topic. So if there's any Final Cut topics that you guys want to see translated from Adobe Premiere, I'd be more than happy to cover that for you. Answer any questions along the lines of Final Cut. And yeah, hopefully this steps your film game up a little bit. The orange and teal look always works. Just try the profile that just shoots in log. You don't even have to play with that. Just do it all post, understand it. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for all the love and support. If you can continue to do that, that'd be great. Like, subscribe. This has been a lot of fun, and we'll move on to something else with Final Cut in the next video here. So I'll see you in that one.